The snow, in the god's wood of Winterfell, lay undisturbed, a smooth white sheet beneath the ancient weirwood's crimson leaves. Bran Stark felt the hush of the place like a lover's breath against his cheek, cool and whispering. Yet his mind was miles away, thousands of miles, in truth, drifting over a rolling sea of heat that had nothing of northern frost in it. His body remained in the thin winter cloak Arya had draped about his shoulders, but his spirit streamed southward on a skein of ravens, a gray cloud buffeted by the wind's invisible fists. Below him winter gave way to green, and green to the sun-cracked ochres of the Reach, until at last the deep blue of Blackwater Bay swallowed the horizon. A dragon's roar reverberated in the cavity of Bran's chest like a distant thunderclap. He felt his watchers, the ravens, scatter in shrieking panic, their quick hearts fluttering in terror of the creature blotting out the noonday sun. For an instant Bran's awareness cleaved. Part of him followed the bird's mad swirls, but another part, the green's ears part, plummeted toward the beating wings of the beast that dominated the sky. Drogon. The name rang bronze true through Bran's thoughts. Scale and sinew. Furnace blood. Smoke-wreathed jaws. Drogon was rage incarnate. A black comet poised to strike King's Landing, and upon his back, strapped between the curved ebony spines, Daenerys Targaryen leaned forward, white hair streaming, her face ravaged by grief and fury nobody on the ground could have understood. Bran tasted the salt of her tears, the iron of her sorrow, and the wildfire tang of the city lying in her path. In the courtyard of Winterfell, Samwell Tarly's hand closed gently around Bran's wrist. "Are you all right?" he whispered, though the day's gray hush swallowed the question. Bran's gaze remained vacant, the eyes of a boy half lost to time. Yet his answer, distant and hollow, broke the air. "She means to burn them all." The scorpions lining King's Landing's crumbling walls creaked as they swiveled upward. On the battlements, men in Lannister crimson aimed arrowheads that glittered like splinters of dawn. Small folk thronged the narrower streets despite the bells that clanged in breathless summons. To surrender, to repent, to die. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei paced, her silk gown rustling, hands protectively folded over the slight swell of her belly. Each footfall echoed her prayers to any god willing to spare the child that was all she had left. Bran felt the red-hot core of Drogon's hunger, felt Daenerys urging him to descend, to cleanse the city and its iron throne in dragonfire. Yet Bran was a wind swirling around destiny's coals, and the three-eyed raven within him saw the branching paths that would follow a single word of Dracarys. King's Landing could become a pyre for innocence, ash drifting on the evening tide, and the realm would choke on that smoke for generations. The old gods offer no mercy, only choices. Hadn't Daenerys chosen mercy once in Meereen, only to lose a friend, a child, and the trust of her freedmen? Hadn't Jon Snow chosen mercy on the Wall, letting the wildlings through, and paid with the daggers of his brothers? Bran understood. Mercy was not the opposite of vengeance but its twin. Dangerous because it could so easily be broken. Yet somewhere beneath the ashes of every foreseen future, a slender green shoot still threaded upward. Bran could feel it, fragile yet stubborn, as if the weirwood roots themselves writhed through the blackened stones of the capital, seeking sky. He let himself fall from the ravens and into Drogon's furnace heart. The hot darkness swallowed him like a scream. Bran had warged into wolves and birds, once even Hodor. But a dragon was a storm beyond storms, wind and magma and ancient malice, sealed within scales harder than armor. The beast bucked against him with raw primeval force. Its thoughts were smell and hunger and kill. The girl on his back was pain and command and grief, but the dragon recognized her ache as akin to its own. A hatchling lost, another slain, the last of its siblings avenged in fire. Bran fought as a swimmer fights undertow, pushing thoughts not of conquest but of cold. He conjured Winterfell's snows, the chill of the crypts, the soft mother smell of fur. For an instant, Drogon's wings faltered. The golden spires of the city wobbled below like candle flames in a draught. Daenerys, unprepared, clutched the saddle horns. Her lips parted, a word of fear rather than power. Then Bran found what he needed, the memory of another dragon's gentle rumble. Rhaegal's, the brothers slain by iron lances above Dragonstone, and he let Drogon feel not rage but sorrow. A tremor rolled through the black serpent's muscles. His furnace cooled, only a fraction but enough. Bran's consciousness flooded Drogon's eyes. The world sharpened. A single fluttering banner upon the Red Keep's tower snapped crimson, Lannister red, and Drogon's pupils drank it in, no longer as blood to blind him, but as a target to strike surgically. Bristling scorpions along the walls glimmered like spears waiting to impale. Bran steered the great head toward them. Daenerys' voice cracked in a shout. The city below could never decipher. Drogon. Rhaegarys thought. That was the command poised on her tongue. Fire meant safety. Fire ended threats. Yet Drogon banked, ignoring the invisible reins of her fury. Wings like black sails beat upward. Instead of plunging at the city's heart, the dragon veered along the outer curtain wall, spewing a narrow cone of flame. It was dragonfire still. No gentle hearth, but a precise lash that melted scorpions, splintered ramparts, and left defenders scrambling like ants before a forge. Stone hissed. Molten iron pooled, but only in a line, a controlled blaze that spared the streets behind. Startled shouts rose from the Golden Company outside the gates. Jon Snow, dazed by the ringing of bells, looked skyward where Drogon's shadow arced. Tyrion Lannister's jaw fell open as the dragonfire burned weapons, not people. A thrill like a waking dream surged through him. Maybe it was not too late. In Bran's mind, the voice of the three-eyed raven whispered, "All paths lead to the same river, yet some find calmer crossings." He dragged Drogon higher, over the domes of the great septi, the dusty squares, the crowded docks. Ignoring Daenerys' mounting confusion, her fear that her beast had gone mad, Bran charted a path of terror without massacre. Flames pulsed in rhythmic bursts wherever scorpions stood. Towers, bastions, barges. Soldiers fled, leaving shattered winches smoldering. Below, Grey Worm saw the Unsullied hesitate. The bells tolled, but Drogon's precise fury urged restraint. Grey Worm's grip tightened on his spear. The order to charge stuck in his throat. He had bled for his queen's new world, but her dragon seemed to promise a different victory. Fear without annihilation. He barked foreign words, sharp, commanding restraint. The Unsullied formed ranks but did not advance. On the city's western wall, Euron Greyjoy staggered from the harbor's shallows, half drowned. His mocking grin flickered when he beheld the Skyrider painting molten streaks across battlements rather than raining fire upon the masses. Euron, drunk on doom, had craved chaos. Measured destruction felt like a jest at his expense. He drew a damp sword and limped inland, seeking the sister lover queen whose paranoia had hired him. Bran felt Daenerys twisting in her saddle. "Stop fighting me," she hissed. But Drogon rumbled deep, a bass note of rebellion, spine quivering under her leather-wrapped thighs. She pressed her knees, years of training urging the dragon to obey, but Bran's will coiled through sinew and bone now. For every command she issued, the Greenseer countered, guiding Drogon like wind shaping a wild blaze. He sensed her fury turning upon him, though she could not name the specter lodged in her mount. Drogon wheeled over the Red Keep. Atop the tallest tower, Cersei stepped onto a balcony, flanked by Sir Gregor in his hulking helm, and Qyburn quivering behind. Bran glimpsed her upturned face, white as snow under a summer sun. Terror chiseled her features, yet beneath it lay a brittle hope. Perhaps the dragon, unsated by melting scorpions, would still turn her enemies to ash. Drogon's jaws gaped. A gout of flame spurted, but Bran angled it high, a blazing arc above the tower's peak, scorching only air. Heat rippled across the queen's cheeks. Her golden hair fluttered like a beacon. She stumbled back, skirt swirling. Tyrion, breathless from climbing the rubble-strewn streets, reached the base of the tower at that very moment. He craned his neck, saw Drogon's faint, and understood the message. Surrender still lived in the dragon's language. Cersei fled inside. Jaime was gone, crushed beneath collapsing tunnels of the Red Keep earlier that morning, his body still pinned in the dark. Qyburn whispered of secret passages to flee the city, but Cersei's pride lashed him silent. She would not slink away like a rat. Yet neither could she deny the ringing bells, the dragon's restraint, the small folks' frantic sobs. Her mind raced. She had no surviving scorpions, no wildfire caches. Tyrion's sabotage had seen to that. All she had was fear, and fear for once belonged to another. Below, Jon Snow marched through the broken gate, sword raised, but limp at his side. The city guards had thrown down their arms. Unsullied columns advanced only far enough to secure streets, accepting surrendered blades. Dothraki circled like hawks, rinded back by organic awe at the dragon's display of controlled might. The bells tolled on. High in the blue, Bran perceived Drogon's chest heave, with each restrained inferno. Dragonfire was life to the creature, but Bran whispered winter through its blood. Enough. Not yet. Then he felt the wall crack. An inner barrier, not of stone but of trust, within Daenerys herself. Her hands went slack on the reins as the horror of what she had intended collided with the sight of what could be. Tears salted her lips. She saw streets unburnt, people alive, soldiers kneeling. She saw a path to victory that did not require a city of bones. Yet she was a Targaryen child of fire, doubt scalded like betrayal. Who? She choked. Who dares? Bran swallowed her question, blanketing Drogon's consciousness with the memory of Nissa's sacrifice from some ancient corner of the world. Pain and love. Forging flame that saved humanity. Let her feel that. Let her think the dragon found its own mercy. He turned Drogon in a slow, deliberate spiral above the city's heart. Smoke drifted upward from the demolished defenses, but the streets below shimmered golden with midday sun, not smothered in char. Bells rang. Somewhere a babe's cry pierced the hush. The populace, seeing the black miracle above, fell to their knees, thousands of faces lifted in gratitude or terror, or both. Bran sensed Tyrion pushing through the press toward the Red Keep's courtyard. Arya slipped ghost-quiet among shattered stalls, eyes fixed on the tower that housed the queen who had ordered her family's deaths. Sandor Clegane, limping from wounds suffered on the long road south, caught her sleeve. Vengeance today served no one, he warned. Arya's hand tightened on Needle, but when Drogon's shadow swept over them, she felt the strangeness in its flight and stilled. On the road from the Great Sept, Davos Seaworth leaned upon a fallen lintel and muttered a prayer to the Mother for all those spared. He would never know that the one who answered wore no crown but sat silent in a snow-dusted chair leagues away. Sam's hand still gripped Bran's wrist. In the Godswood, the young woman, Mira Reed, knelt by Bran's other side, scanning his slack face. He's gone, she whispered, meaning his mind. Where? South. Sam said. To the dragon. Mira's brows knit in fear. Can he control such a creature? Sam shook his head, though hope twinkled behind the worry. If anyone can, it's Bran. He is the memory of the world now. Bendo. The Direwolf's ghost and Nymeria prowled beyond the trees, a surprise return in the night. Ghost's red eyes followed Bran as if aware of all invisible threads he tugged. The wolves did not howl, but lay beside him, guardians of the boy who guided dragons. Bran guided Drogon to the Red Keep's highest terrace. Stone cracked beneath talons, but no blaze followed. Daenerys slid from the saddle, hair whipping across her tear-streaked face. Her boots crunched mortar. Her legs trembled with exhaustion and the sudden absence of rage. She stared at the city, so vast, so fragile, so alive. The silence of withheld fire thundered louder than any roar. Behind her, the stairwell doors burst inward. The mountain emerged in tarnished armor. Cersei stepped past her hulking shield, trembling yet defiant. Tyrion arrived moments later, breath ragged, and threw himself between them before Cersei could speak. It's done, he rasped. Call off your men. The city has surrendered. Cersei's lips twisted. The city surrendered to a dragon. Dragons answer only to Targaryens. She leveled a trembling finger at Daenerys. Burn me if you dare, girl, but the realm will remember you as a butcher. Daenerys' violet eyes drifted from Tyrion's pleading face to Cersei's sneer, then to the dragon crouched behind, muzzle steaming. Bran whispered through Drogon's mind, a vision of what would remain of the queen if fire kissed her silks. Ash, bone, terror. Daenerys swallowed. I will not burn a pregnant woman. Her voice cracked on the words. The admission of empathy tasted like defeat to her war-racked pride. Cersei's pupils flared at the word pregnant. Some piece of her hardened, bargaining. Then you are weak, she hissed. This city needs a lion's strength. Tyrion bristled. Your strength summoned wildfire beneath Baelor's sept, remember? Your strength robbed thousands. It ends today. The mountain shifted, gauntleted fist tightening on obsidian pommel. Drogon rumbled, giant claws scraping slate. Bran poised, ready to strike only that armored giant, sparing the woman behind him, but a smaller shadow darted past his peripheral senses. Arya Stark leapt from a lower balcony, rolling hard on the terrace. Needle flashed. She landed between Cersei and her monstrous champion. Blue eyes glinted, wolf-sharp dot-eye. A lioness, she said, faces a direwolf now. Cersei recoiled, but the mountain swung. Drogon's head struck like a hammer. Stone shattered beneath the gargantuan skull. The mountain slammed against the parapet, armor flowering cracks. A second swipe sent him over the edge, a black meteor plummeting to the courtyard far below. Silence claimed the terrace. Wind rode its edges. Cersei's knees failed. She slumped, hands cupping her belly. Tears spilled at last, not for the city or the throne, but for fear of death unborn. Arya lifted needle's point to her throat, but paused. In that pause, something inside Cersei broke. The facade, pride, everything. And she whispered, "Mercy." Arya sheathed the blade. Mercy is all that's left. She murmured, remembering words once spoken by a brother in black who'd seen too much war. Daenerys stepped forward. "The throne is mine by fire and blood," she told Cersei. "But I will rebuild this city, not bury it." Bran eased Drogon's head toward her, a nudge like a horse's muzzle to its rider. She touched a scale, felt the heat humming beneath, but not the scorch of blind vengeance. She looked skyward, as if half expecting some celestial judge to deny her newfound vow. None came. Tyrion knelt before her, head bowed. "Your Grace," he said, "Queen of the Ashes no more." She helped him stand, eyes haunted. "I do not understand what happened," she confessed in a whisper. "I felt him resist me." Tyrion's brow furrowed. "Him?" "The dragon." She caught herself. It sounded mad. Yet Drogon's gentle rumble almost seemed an answer. Somewhere within her, cracks of light pierced the darkness she had nursed. She thought of Missandei. Could her friend's final plea for justice, not vengeance, speak now through flame? Bran withdrew, the effort of holding the dragon's mind fraying his strength like cloth in a storm. He left behind a single command: protect her. Drogon's instincts clenched around it like claws. Bran's ravens scattered northward. In the godswood, Bran's eyes fluttered open. His breath steamed. Sam and Mira sighed as if surfacing from deep water. Bran's voice rasped, "King's Landing stands." Sam stared, tears gleaming. "You did it?" "No. She did." Bran's lips curved, brittle as hoarfrost. "She still might burn it tomorrow. The future is a weirwood maze. But tonight, the city lives." Ghost nuzzled Bran's knee. Somewhere in the dark, Nymeria howled. A long, mournful note, half warning, half triumph. The old gods drowsed in their blood-red leaves, less indifferent than men believed. Night fell upon King's Landing, a city scorched yet not broken. Fires flickered along the outer walls where melted scorpions cooled. The air carried the scent of smoke, yet underneath lay the living breath of thousands. Sweat, fear, hope, rare perfume after near annihilation. In the throne room, Daenerys sat upon the steps beneath the Iron Throne, not daring to touch its blades. Jon Snow stood beside her, cloak smudged, face shadowed. He saw at last the shape of the woman he had loved emerge from Dragonfire's glare, softened, haunted, and real. His gloved hand brushed hers, hesitant. She did not pull away. Tyrion approached, a roll of parchment in his hands. Terms of surrender signed by Cersei. The queen's name curved across it, a trembling script betraying the fear beneath her bravado. Cersei remained confined in her own tower, under unsullied guard, her fate to be decided come dawn. Grey Worm knelt at the base of the stairs, helmet removed. The Unsullied had lost brothers in the assault on the walls. They always lost brothers, but none to civilian melee or mindless charge. That difference glinted like dawn on his dark eyes. "Your command saved many," he said, voice low. "But your enemies still breathe." Daenerys considered the copper spiderwebbing on the vaulted ceiling. "We have broken their spears. Tomorrow we break their chains." Words once spoken in Slaver's Bay. Yet something inside her trembled, for she had always believed chains and spears the same. Now she saw a third thing: children clutching charred dolls, mothers wailing where walls had collapsed, men kneeling not in love but desperate gratitude. If ruling required that they love her, she would fail. But if ruling required only that they live, perhaps she could begin anew. Jon read doubt in her silence. He spoke quietly. "No lord gains loyalty with fear alone. I learned that at the wall, fear is a shield, not a bond. It turns on you in the end." "Then no." She met his eyes, remembering kisses among snows and trees. "Help me," she whispered. "Help me make them love." His hand closed around hers. "I will." Above them, Drogon roosted on the ramparts, wings folded. The city's lanterns flickered against his obsidian scales, glimmering like constellations on a moonless sea. If dragons dreamed, surely his were of hearths rather than holocausts tonight. Far across Westeros, in a tower without walls or time, the three-eyed raven's voice echoed in Bran's mind, ragged as winter wind. "You changed one thread in the tapestry. Beware the next knot." Bran knew. Juwadiuai. History was the tide. Push it back, and still its wave returned, lapping at different shores. Daenerys' mercy could wither tomorrow beneath new griefs. Cersei's child could grow to reclaim her mother's rage. Jon's love could sour in rumor and politics. Yet for this fragile dusk, King's Landing breathed, and Bran Stark, the boy who fell, had guided a dragon away from night. He settled deeper into his cloak, watched stars bloom overhead, and let the hush of the godswood stitch his scattered thoughts. Somewhere to the south, bells tolled again. Slow now, solemn, as if counting the heartbeats of a city granted a stay of execution. Bran imagined their echo carrying on the wind all the way to Winterfell, a reminder that sometimes the greatest fire is the one not lit. He closed his eyes, and though the night was cold, a warm breath of dragonfire, gentle, restrained, seemed to flicker across his dreams. A hush lay over King's Landing streets when dawn pinked the sky. The people emerged from homes and cellars, eyes widening at intact rooftops, towers still standing, and the dragon perched like a dark gargoyle on the red keep. Hope, that most fragile bird, beat its wings in 1,000 breasts. Inside the throne room, Daenerys Targaryen rose to claim her seat at last. She walked up the iron stairs and turned, but instead of lowering herself, she laid one hand lightly upon a blade. "Until the realm is healed, no queen will sit here," she declared. Her voice carried across the cavernous hall, through shattered windows, and down collapsing corridors. "The throne is a promise made in steel. Let us prove worthy of it first." A murmur of awe rippled through soldiers, and small folk gathered below. Jon Snow met her gaze, pride warring with caution. But he nodded. Tyrion smiled, lines of old cynicism easing. Arya leaned against a pillar, arms folded, considering the queen anew. And Bran, hundreds of leagues away, felt the tremor of possibility shift again. A path through tangled future gloom brightened like sun on morning frost. He did not know if it would hold, for men and women were storms in themselves. But the green shoot had emerged, tender and alive. The old gods rustled in the leaves above his head. For one heartbeat, Bran Stark thought he heard them breathe a word, not of doom, but of dawn. The dawn smelled of cinders and sea salt, a mingling of birth and burial that drifted through the broken windows of Maegor's holdfast. Daenerys watched the sunrise paint the sky in bruised rose, and for the first time since Dragonstone she let herself breathe without tasting blood on the air. The bells had fallen silent hours ago, yet their echo lingered in the hush, an invisible toll that weighed every heartbeat. Outside the throne room, Tyrion's rasping pen scratched across parchment as he recorded the names of the dead. Soldiers of the Golden Company flung into the bay, Lannister archers half buried in the toppled battlements, 3 unsullied whose charred shields lay like black lilies, where scorpion bolts had struck sparks from dragonscale. The list was shorter, immeasurably, miraculously shorter, than it would have been had Drogon unleashed the storm Daenerys had willed. Tyrion paused often, wiping his quill to steady a hand that would not stop shaking. Each pause etched the meadow of his mind with the memory of Drogon banking away from the heart of the city, fire leashed by some unseen rain. He had witnessed more wonders in his life than he dared count, but never one that turned annihilation to restraint in the breath of a breath. A curling tendril of steam rose from the stairs where Daenerys' fingers rested on cold iron. During the night, Citadel maesters in gray-green robes had come, tiptoeing past unsullied spears, to gather the worst of the wounded into the Great Septi. The Great Septet had survived, though its western facade sagged like an old man's cheek. The hill beneath it still groaned with buried wildfire, yet the fuses of sabotage had been found and snuffed. Tyrion had checked every chamber thrice before allowing the healers in. He closed the ledger with a sigh. 1,000 dead, give or take a score. 10,000 had died on the day Eris's wildfire took the Sept of Baelor alone. A lesser tally was no triumph, yet the very space between those numbers felt like the wide stone bridge of a miracle. Daenerys' voice drifted from the hall behind him, low, almost tender. Tell the quartermasters no child will go unfed. Tyrion will direct the stores. She spoke Valyrian first, then the common tongue for those within earshot. Grey Worm stood at her right shoulder. Helmetless, blood-spattered bald head shining in dawn light. Davos Seaworth flanked her left, smelling faintly of tar and salt, a symbol of the realm's battered conscience. Jon Snow leaned in the shadows 10 steps back, eyes never leaving her figure on the steps. He wore no crown, no sigil, only a plain black cloak whose hem brushed the stained marble like a crow's wing. No one yet dared ask why she refused the throne's seat. The edges of its swords glimmered above her in jagged silhouette, an iron reef wherein a queen might wreck her soul. Her hand, when she braced upon a twisted blade, came away with a bead of blood. She studied the droplet, ruby bright in the gloom, and frowned as though it accused her. The city below breathed in shallow cadence. Smoke drifted from charred scorpion mounts along the curtain wall, forming frail black ribbons that unraveled into pale sky. Small folk crept from doorways like mice testing daylight, uncertain whether kindness or claws waited. Some carried pails of water to douse lingering sparks. Others brought their injured to triage tents where masters labored with ash-blackened linens. All eyes stole upward to the Red Keep, fixed on the dark gargoyle of Drogon perched atop Aegon's high hill. From far below, the dragon looked carved of onyx, motionless. Yet an occasional twitch of spine-tail set birds a-flutter a league away. When Daenerys emerged onto a balcony above the square of the mud gate, the milling crowd hushed to a single held breath. She wore the white wolf cloak Jon had draped across her shoulders during the night, the bloodstain at its breast washed clean in the fountain of the maiden. To the old across the square, she looked Rhaella reborn. To the young, she was a sorceress stepping from legend. Wind teased silver hair across her cheeks. She raised one palm, and silence deepened. You bowed yesterday in fear, she said, voice carrying without shout. I ask you rise today in hope. There were no cheers, but heads lifted. A boy of perhaps 8 summers, one sleeve scorched away, stared up with wide brown eyes that shimmered like wet amber. Beside him a baker's widow clasped her hands until knuckles blanched. She had lost both ovens, yet the youngest of her brood still breathed because the dragonfire had missed their thatch by a dozen yards. Across from her, a former septa, robe hem singed, star scar still on her forehead, clutched a newborn pulled from rubble past midnight. Daenerys continued, softer. I promised to break chains. The city's chains are fear, hunger, and the wheel of houses grinding your bones. We will forge new links, bread healing and law, until fear has no place to anchor. She did not promise perfection. Tyrion had urged caution. Instead, she spoke the old Kiskari word for tomorrow, Jaisa, and promised they would see many of them. Someone began to clap. An uncertain tap that spread like raindrops across mismatched tiles. Jon Snow watched smiles blooming shyly, felt a weight uncoiling in his chest. He had dreaded the dawn would bring massacre's justification. Instead, it birthed a timid, tenuous faith. He wanted to believe in it, to believe in her. After the balcony, she returned to the throne room. Arya waited within, face half in shadow beneath the cowl of a city watch cloak pilfered during the night. No guards barred her. Grey Worm had observed silently when she slipped past. Daenerys approached the wolf girl with measured calm, every officer in the room tensing as 2 forces of lethal will drew close. Arya spoke first. Cersei. The name dangled like a blade between them. She lives, Daenerys answered. For now. Justice. Arya's gaze traveled to Drogon beyond the shattered window frame. Justice, Daenerys agreed, though the shape of it had yet to crystallize in her mind. Not vengeance. Arya's mouth crooked, half smile, half snarl. Vengeance rides the wind. Justice plants its feet. She touched the pommel of needle through her cloak and inclined her head, acceptance of a pact no one else in the room could parse. By midday, Tyrion convened a council in the Queen's solar. Davos, Grey Worm, Jon Royce for the Vale, Sir Brienne bearing Sansa's written words, Gendry Baratheon newly legitimized, and Samwell Tarly in borrowed maester's chains, still too bright for comfort. Cersei sat in iron fetters beside a marble pillar, flanked by unsullied spears and the gaunt privy councillor Qyburn, who looked more corpse than man. Euron Greyjoy was dragged in last, wrists bound with tar-black cord, seawater dripping from his beard and pooling around mismatched boots. He wore that grin that mistook bravado for immortality. When Drogon rumbled above the roof, he faltered only a notch, though it was enough to widen Tyrion's smile. Daenerys stood at the high-backed chair but would not sit. She read aloud the articles Tyrion had drafted. Restoration of Stormland's revenues to rebuild King's Landing. Surrender of Lannister gold in Casterly Rock's vaults. Dissolution of the City Watch to be reformed under a charter ensuring smallfolk representation. Naming of Gendry Baratheon as Master of Ships to curb piracy. Appointment of Davos as Lord Hand until a full council election by Lords and Commons could convene at midsummer. Her voice never trembled, but Tyrion noticed she skipped the clause proclaiming her sole sovereign. He said nothing. When she finished, Royce harumphed. The North will want terms. He offered Brienne the floor. She unfolded Sansa's letter, neat as Winterfell snow. The North demanded recognition of its sovereignty, reparations for losses in the war against the dead, and the return of Queen in the North title to Sansa Stark. No armies would march south so long as Daenerys' dragon remained north of the neck. Polite, pointed, and unmistakably final. Jon's gaze flicked to Daenerys' profile. If the words stung, she betrayed nothing. She only asked, "Does the Vale support the North's claim?" Royce shifted. "The Vale has no wish to sever ties that have bound us since Aegon the Conqueror's peace. Should your grace recognize Lady Sansa's rule, the Vale will honor you both." Davos nodded. A 7-pointed star still shines brightest when all 7 points reflect light. He realized the metaphor risked heresy. The faith militant had been broken, but the faith of the 7 endured. Grey Worm spoke in Valyrian. The Unsullied swore to follow the Dragon Queen. Not mend fences of Westerosi houses. Davos translated. Daenerys answered in the same tongue, so only the Unsullied clearly heard. Her rule extended through justice, not terror. Their discipline would guarantee justice where politics could not. Grey Worm accepted with a soldier's nod, though Davos saw a shadow of longing in eyes that remembered Neith's scented breezes. Tyrion cleared his throat. And what of the former queen? All gazes converged on Cersei. Iron bonds chafed her wrists raw, yet she held her spine as though steel grew there. The golden hair had dulled. The belly swell showed enough to remind every eye that death would claim 2 lives, not 1. She drew herself upright. "I will not beg," she said. "A lion does not whimper for scraps." Tyrion let the silence stretch. Memories crowded him. Mother bleeding as she brought him forth. Father sneering at the twisted cub. Siblings tasting glory while he bit shame. He looked at Cersei and saw both conqueror and corpse. "Then roar," he replied softly. She pursed her lips, but no sound emerged. Daenerys folded her arms. The child is innocent of the mother's crimes. She considered, then spoke as though unspooling thought. "Dragonstone can house a prisoner as well as a queen. She will remain there under guard until the babe is born. Afterward, the 7 will judge her." She did not specify if the judgment would be a trial or the cold acquiescence of a fate sealed by time. Ambiguity itself felt merciful. Cersei's shoulders sagged. For a heartbeat, she looked older than her 40 years, almost mortal. A single tear traced the groove beside her nose. Euron barked a brittle laugh. House Lannister caged on Dragonstone. House Greyjoy in shackles. Crown me just king of fools. Grey Worm cuffed him silent. Daenerys eyed the Ironborn. "You murdered a dragon's child." The words fell like millstones. "Drogon hungers." Euron lost his smile. "You wouldn't feed me to that beast." No answer came, but a hiss echoed through the open colonnade, a furnace exhalation that set torches guttering. Euron's flesh went waxen. The queen gestured almost lazily. Unsullied dragged him toward the courtyard where Drogon lay sprawled. His screams broke into snarled prayers to the drowned god. The council remained silent until the sound ended in one wet crunch. When Grey Worm returned, wiping bone chips from his greaves, no one spoke of clemency again. Word of Cersei's exile spread by sunset. Some small folk muttered that leniency betrayed the dead of Blackwater and the Shamewalk. Others exhaled relief that the queen who might have burned them in wildfire would not die pregnant beneath the headsman's blade. The Red Keep's dungeons disgorged ragged prisoners whom Daenerys released after oaths to disturb no peace. In Flea Bottom, Great John Umber's surviving men helped distribute barley loaves baked from Winterfell stores. Sansa had sent south by galley, a gesture both aid and subtle diplomacy. In the God's Wood of Winterfell, Bran felt each ripple, like threads quivering under his fingertips. He sat alone now. Sam had returned to the castle to write of the dawn that spared the capital. Henry Brewer, a stable boy, brought Bran's supper and found him staring north beyond the wall of trees. The boy asked if he wanted the candles lit, but Bran said the moon provided enough. When Brewer left, Bran closed his eyes and drifted again upon a rook's wings. He followed the King's Road south, watching columns of refugees hobble toward the city for rumor of generous breadlines. Through the rook's keen eyes he spied a hedge knight riding hard, a sealed letter tucked in breastplate, news of Queen's mercy destined for Old Town. He circled the dragon perched on the Red Keep, tasting the furnace breath in memory. Then he let go and entered Drogon once more, but gently, stroking not seizing, so the dragon recognized the known shadow. Drogon dreamed as much as beasts could. In memory fire, Bran glimpsed a mountain valley where 3 dragons once soared, felt echo calls of Rhaegal and Viserion reverberate from beyond death. A pang shot through the great heart, grief as bright as molten gold. Bran shared colder memories in exchange. Snowflakes melting on warm scale. A woman's soothing lullaby in Valyrian. The crush of Jon's embrace around the queen's shoulders. Dragon and boy communed in wordless images until Drogon's unrest softened into a rumbling purr that shook the ramparts. Bran withdrew. In the deep of night, Ghost appeared under the weirwood. muzzle flecked with dew, and laid his massive head in Bran's lap. Bran stroked white fur, thinking of Jon with bones powdered by duty between two queens, one of fire, one of ice. The dire wolf whined as though hearing his unspoken worry. Bran whispered, "Not all wars end when swords go quiet." 3 days later, the northern host arrived at the city's ruined gates. Karstark banners, umber axes, Manderly mermen, and at their fore Sansa Stark on a tall gray mare, cloak trimmed in fox fur despite the southern heat. Beside her rode Sir Podrick Payne, gray steel polished, and behind, Lady Alice Karstark with a company of spearmen shining bright as winter stars. The small folk gasped, for though the Stark banners had marched south before, never with a woman at their tip since Queen Nymeria's day. Rumors of a northern queen multiplied like summer flies. Jon met them at the gate. Sister and brother dismounted in a swirl of dust. Sansa saw the fatigue in his lashes, the faint tremor in fingers curled around Longclaw's pommel, and drew him into arms that had comforted Rickon under falling leaves. Neither spoke of dragons, bells, or the taste of smoke. They spoke of home. The crypts, the broken tower mended, Arya's empty chamber still smelling of candle wax and old leather. Then Sansa lifted her gaze to the smoldering scabs along the city walls. "She holds her rage in check, you say?" Jon answered, "She learned she could." He did not add, "with help from Bran." They rode up Aegon's Hill. Sansa wore a mask of calm, but her eyes flicked to Drogon perched above like a thundercloud frozen in mid-burst. Inside the throne room, Daenerys descended the steps to welcome them. Cloak of winter white traded for a somber gray gown, stitched with the smoking tower of Belor. Sansa curtsied, yet claimed equal standing. Courtesies exchanged, they retired to the solar where Bran's letter waited. Ravens flew fast now between Winterfell and King's Landing, bearing pages thick with Greenseer scrawl. The letter spoke of futures branched like snow-covered pine, of threats unborn from Essos, of winter not yet spent. Sansa read in silence, lips thinning. Daenerys watched her carefully. She saw the northern woman's distrust, felt its chill prickle the air. She recalled another red-haired girl who had watched her cross the Red Waste, a slave child with solemn eyes who later died of flux. Flames were easy. Frost was hard. She met the Northern Queen with deliberate openness. "Winter gave me shelter when I had none. I will not set torch to its gates." Sansa's reply came measured. "And winter will not freeze your crops, so long as the north stands free." A muscle twitched in her cheek. Memory of Ramsay's dogs, perhaps. Of southern games fought on northern flesh. Jon interjected, but Daenerys lifted a hand. "I accept," she said, surprising them both. "Let the Northern Vale stand independent beneath the Wolf and Falcon. In return you shall aid King's Landing's rebuilding with stone cutters and lumber, and your ports will receive grain at fair tariffs. Our peace will be built on trade, not tribute." Tyrion, entering midway, nearly stumbled at the bold concession. Yet he caught the calculating glimmer in Daenerys' eye. Sovereignty would cost Sansa loyalty, in practice. Without the realm's harvest, northern winters loomed fangs bared. Binding trade ensured swords would remain sheathed. It was politics as old as Valyria, ice forced to sup from fire's table. Sansa considered, then extended a gloved hand. They clasped wrists, not fingers, a warrior's seal. That night feasting halls reopened under hastily repaired beams. Northern ale met Dornish red. Spiced lamb mingled with salt cod casserole scraped together from harbor stores. Gendry hammered a broad grin across faces by promising fair wages at the new royal shipyards for any smith willing. Arya slipped among the crowd, ghosting behind pillars, watching the swirl of alliances forming like new constellations. She did not trust the fragile peace. She distrusted the whispers of sellswords nursing cups in dark corners even more. Needle lay light at her hip. At a corner table, Samwell Tarly unrolled a map for Tyrion and Davos. Supplies from the Reach, garrison plans, quarantine for burn infections. "The city's lungs are weak," he said, tapping the parchment. "We must prevent flux or rot, or the bells will toll for plague next." Tyrion swore never to hear those bells again, and promised every latrine trench would be dug twice as deep. Grey Worm declined the feast, kneeling before a bronze bowl in the courtyard, scattering end-ethy butterflies carved of paper over a pool. One by one he lit them, letting tiny flames drift into midnight. Daenerys found him there, and neither spoke, for the hush of the Unsullied's grief needed no words. She knelt, palms hot against sun-warmed flagstone, and dropped in a single white butterfly scribbled with the name Missandei. The paper curled, kissed by flame, and rose, a brief star. Weeks passed. Ash blown from the battlements collected in alleys. Children used it to draw dragons extinguishing scorpions on cracked tiles. Masons raised scaffold to shore sections of the outer curtain wall. Baelish's demolished brothels were cleared for bakeries. The war had made bread more necessary than sin, though many argued sin would rise again soon enough. Inside Maegor's holdfast, Bran Stark arrived at last. Arya rode before him on horseback, leading a small guard. Behind trundled a stout ox cart modified for Bran's wicker chair. He descended into the courtyard beneath a canopy of dragonwing leather rigged to shade. When Daenerys came to greet him, she found herself bowing first, unbidden, as though the ancient gods peered through the boy's carved features. Bran's eyes, deep as midnight pools, met hers. "You steered my dragon," she whispered, sudden as confession. Bran blinked. "I nudged a river toward its gentlest current. You robbed me of choice." I revealed another. His tone held no reproach, only the quiet surety of snow settling. "Your mercy is still yours. You chose to keep it." She exhaled. "Will you stay?" "Long enough to plant roots," he said, and she understood the city's weirwoods, saplings from seeds he carried, would soon rise in the gods' emptied quarter, binding old magic to new stone. Jon greeted him with an embrace that smelled of soot and salt spray. Bran whispered a single line in Jon's ear. Whatever the words, they left the king in all but name silent, eyes shining wetly. That evening, Bran rolled his chair onto the terrace where the Iron Throne loomed. He regarded the forged swords as one might study beetle wings, curious yet detached. Daenerys joined him. "My ancestor forged that seat," she said. "Yours unmade a king who sought to burn this city." "Perhaps the throne should burn," Bran said. She flinched. "It is a symbol. So is ash." He sighed, ancient in a body still raw. "One day, none will sit." He did not elaborate whether that day was near or lost to centuries. She knelt beside him, voice soft as prayers. "Will I become the queen they fear?" "I saw you feed the hungry," Bran answered. "I saw you spare a lioness and mourn a wolf's lost kin. Fear follows every crown, but you need not sup on it. Let the city's bells ring weddings and harvests, not surrender." She nodded, hand resting atop the chair's wheel. For a long while they watched stars kindle above the bay, reflections shivering in black water. Drogon glided overhead, a shadow against moonlight, and for once his roar sounded less like doom than distant thunder promising rain to wheat. Winter melted from the north while spring coaxed lilacs through rubble in the capital. A midsummer council convened on the dragon pit's cracked marble. Lords from every corner, maesters, elected borough consuls from the city's merchant guilds, even a dozen Dothraki khals, who had chosen settled life tending goats in the Reach. Beneath the open sky, they voted upon a charter that bound 7 realms and 2 free kingdoms, the North and the Vale, into a pact of common defense and open roads. Daenerys was named protector of the realm, a title Jon said sat lighter than queen, though the Iron Throne remained hers until a successor could be chosen by open vote of all realms. Many called it madness. Others hailed it as Valyria reborn in more tempered steel. Cersei's babe came screaming into Dragonstone's air one moonlit night, a girl with hair like pale gold silk and lungs that shamed harpies. Qyburn placed the swaddled child in Cersei's trembling arms while Unsullied watched from the doorway. The mother wept, and in that moment she looked more broken than all the city's shattered towers. A raven flew by dawn. The babe would live, The mother would live until trial come spring. Daenerys closed her eyes and whispered, thanks to a father she had never known for teaching her that mercy preserves more than lives. It preserves the soul of a realm. Not all accepted her reign. Pockets of golden company sellswords melted into the riverlands, stirring banditry. Men once sworn to Lannister lions plotted from tavern dens. Assassins crept through narrow shadows. Two reached the outer chamber of her apartments before unsullied spears, and Arya's silent blade stopped them. After the second attempt, Drogon took wing nightly, circling the city walls in a dance of deterrence painted by torch flames on scale. In White Harbor, Lord Manderly's ships carried grain south in convoys escorted by Gendry's newly christened longships, sleek, stern-cast with hammer and stag sigils. Trade thrummed like a heartbeat. The north sent ore and pelts. The Reach answered with wine and olives. Dorne, newly relieved of Lannister occupation, promised citrus and silk routes, reopened across the narrow sea. Tyrion taxed wisely. Davos inspected docks. Sam drafted public health codes, fussing like an old hen over water cisterns lest plague hatch. One early autumn night, Jon rode along the Blackwater's banks with Daenerys. The sky spread purple, a bruise healing over Day's flesh. They reined in where reeds whispered like conspirators. She spoke of dragons. How the eggs that birthed them had lain in stone for a century before salt and fire awoke them. He spoke of ghosts. How memories walk the battlements of a man's mind long after battle's din. She traced his scarred cheek. He tucked a stray silver strand behind her ear, fingers lingering. When their lips met, it was not the desperate kiss of doomed lovers on the eve of fire, but the tentative joining of two warriors who had survived the end of their worlds and found each other in the dawn. Yet nothing of men lasts untouched. In the 5th moon of her reign, 2 ships flying the Red Kraken anchored off King's Landing. Diplomats from the Iron Islands. The younger sister of Euron, a hard-eyed captain named Yara, sought audience beneath a banner of truce. She knelt, not to the queen, but to what wisdom spared the city. The sea remembers mercy, she said. The sea repays. She offered timber and pitch for the rebuilding of royal galleys, vowed no reaver would raid the Reach so long as her flag flew. In return, she asked for the body of her brother, or what fragments Drogon had left. Daenerys granted it, and Jon escorted the urn himself to the docks, a storm-quiet courtesy. Yara accepted with a sailor's nod. The dead weigh less at sea, she told him. Best you learn to weigh lighter too, your grace. The title slipped. Jon stiffened. But she only winked, turned, and strode up the gangplank, sails swelling to carry ashes into sunsets beyond horizon. On the 1st anniversary of the bells, Bran planted the first heart tree sapling in the God's Walk, carved from remnants of Maker's garden. Its bark bled pale. Its leaves sprouted crimson in a city that had forgotten such colors. Daenerys attended the planting with King's Guard in plain cloaks. No speeches marked the moment. Bran pressed one palm to the trunk, closed blind-looking eyes, and whispered a name. Drogon. The sapling shivered though no breeze stirred. Between its roots lay a stone inscribed only with the Giscari word Jesa. Tomorrow. By then children laughed in streets lined with fresh plaster. Fish markets bustled on piers restored from storm rot. And above it all the dragon wheeled, sentinel and symbol. Small folk no longer scattered but waved, some daring to toss scraps of pork into rising thermals, delighting when Drogon would swoop to snatch them mid-air. Sansa returned north after midsummer, Arya sailing west on a swift keel to chart unmapped seas, Bran remaining in the capital where roots reached downward into every secret crypt. Jon divided his seasons, summers in the south beside Daenerys, winters in the north among direwolves and distant laments. In time some minstrels sang of 2 crowns, one of silver fire in the south, one of winter snow in the north, linked by a heart tree that grew halfway between in the dreams of a boy who once fell from a tower. And so the realm, battered but unbroken, settled into a fragile peace whose edges glinted with possibility. Scholars would argue later whether a single warg's hand on a dragon's heart changed the world, or merely delayed its burning. But those who lived beneath Drogon's shadow knew. Sometimes the smallest turn of the wheel is all that stands between nightfall and dawn. In the end, the bells rang again, first for weddings, then for harvests, and finally, 5 years to the day after Drogon had banked away from the Red Keep. They rang to celebrate the birth of a prince, Rhaegar Jon, crimson-cheeked, lungs powerful as a dragon hatchling. Daenerys held him beneath the God's Walk's blooming leaves, while Jon stood beside, and Bran watched through serene eyes that saw past and future braided in the infant's fist. Silver light spilled through the weirwood's red canopy. Drogon circled overhead, roared once, a thunder that shook every window, and then angled northward toward fields waiting for charcoal-rich soil to birth spring's promise. In the hush after, the city drew one great breath, the first that felt entirely its own since the day a dragon shadowed its sky. Hope, like the weirwood sapling, had taken root. Whether it would weather storms yet unimagined, no seer could swear. But for now, under dawn's pale blaze, King's Landing stood alive and unburnt, a testament not to the iron swords above, but to the gentle grip that had stayed a dragon's fury. A network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help@openeye.com. A hush descended on the capital the night the comet flared red above King's Landing, a molten wound stitched across the summer sky. At first folk cheered it as a harbinger of plenty, the kind of star old singers said had blazed when dragons first drew breath in Valyria. But when the tale did not fade after 3 nights, murmurs rose in wine shops and under archways left half-mended since the siege. Some whispered the gods were weighing the queen's mercy as surely as they once weighed her wrath. Others swore they heard distant thunder that was no thunder at all, but the beating of wings too vast for memory. Daenerys felt the omen before she saw it. She woke on the 4th dawn beneath drapes of pale linen, Jon's arm heavy across her waist, a strange tremor shivering the still air. Drogon's silhouette hulking beyond the balcony rail caught her eye, wings mantled, head tilted skyward, black throat rippling with a rumble that vibrated her bones. When she slipped from beneath the firs and padded barefoot to the balustrade, the dragon's eye fixed on her, pupil narrowing to a sliver of raven-black glass. Above them the comet blazed deeper than garnet, its tail fanning across the firmament like fresh spilled blood. In its burning wake, Daenerys swore she felt Rhaegal's ghost, and Viserions, and the pride of 100 generations of fire-made flesh. Yet a chill threaded her spine, for prophecy was a snake with 2 mouths. One kissed blessing, the other hissed doom. Jon joined her, hair tousled, sword scar at his throat pale in the moonlight. He looked from her face to the skies wound and back. What does it mean? Fire remembers, she whispered. But it never remembers alone. 2 days later, ravens came from Driftmark and Stonedance, bearing tidings of strange wreckage along the stepstones. Blackened spars, scorched sailcloth, hulls carved by claws too broad for any kraken. The courier spoke of fishermen who found shards of fused obsidian tangled in their nets, razor-edged and warm to the touch long after the sun set. Gendry Baratheon, master of ships, spread the maps on the small council table, candlelight flickering over his hammer-calloused knuckles. The drift lines place the wreckage near Bloodstone, he said, tapping a red-inked X. But there's no report of storms, no whispers of sail battles. Whatever broke those hulls came from sky or sea, not from men. Jan Royce, silver beard braided for the heat, grunted. Sky. I'd wager. That comet's sorcery. Mender. Tyrion leaned forward, one eye narrowing with the quick interest of a man who had once trusted textbook omens about wildfire caches and nearly perished for it. We have 2 facts. Splinters of ships burnt from above, and an omen of fire lingering overhead. Until I taste the salt, I'll not swallow the story whole. Grey Worm, arms folded across a new crimson cloak stitched with the gnashing maw of House Targaryen, said nothing. But the flick of his gaze toward the open shutter where Drogon dozed on the terrace made clear his mind traced a narrower logic. Sky, fire, dragon. If menace threatened their queen, the Unsullied would answer not with treaties, but spears. Daenerys lifted a hand. Speculation does not mend planks. Gendry, prepare 6 of the new war galleys. Yara Greyjoy will sail with you. Those waters answer to her longships as much as ours. If the wrecks speak of enemies, bring me their names. If they speak of omens, bring me the truth. Her gaze swept the council. And let no rumor reach the streets until we know which. Dave O. Seaworth inclined his head, one finger sliding unconsciously over the knotted bones of his missing thumb. I'll go as envoy, he offered. Storms and smoke can both be read by old smugglers. Jon stiffened. The sea still haunted him with memories of corpses on Hardhome's shore, yet he said only, "Take a hand-picked watch. These shards of obsidian, let none cut themselves. Dragon glass is hungry stone." Samwell Tarly, quills tucked behind both ears, piped up. Obsidian warmed without flame isn't natural. Maesters at the Citadel wrote of glass candles, kindled by sorcery, in the doom's wake. If the shards truly glow, they might be embers of some greater fire. He swallowed when gray worms' stare settled on him. We should collect them. Study them. Daenerys nodded. You will have your shard, Sam, wrapped in silk and borne by steady hands. While sails were readied in Blackwater Bay, Sansa Stark and her retinue prepared to depart the capital for the long ride north. Her months in King's Landing had been necessary, cementing trade accords, guiding the refoundling of orphan guilds, and, beneath the silk, measuring every rumor of dissent that might one day reach Winterfell's doorstep. But the heat clung to her like a Lannister promise, fragrant yet suffocating. She yearned for clear frost mornings, for the hush of snow settling on the Godswood Pond, for the weight of northern silence that said more than a court's 1,000 tongues ever could. Before first light on the day of her departure, she found Bran waiting in the shade of the new heart tree inside the palace gardens. The weirwood sapling had grown swiftly these last seasons. Trunk pale as moon-kissed bone, leaves already broad enough to whisper against one another in the dawn breeze. Its roots wound through fresh-turned earth. Silver-white veins Bran claimed reached toward the crypts of the city, seeking old bones. He held a sprig of red leaves in his lap. A gift, he said. Plant it at Winterfell beside our father's stone. Let the roots speak to one another. Sansa took the cutting carefully. You won't come with us? I'm needed here. The city is a tapestry mending itself. Someone must watch the knots. He smiled, the faint curve that never quite reached his eyes now, but warmth flickered beneath it. Besides, Arya sails from Old Town soon. She'll want a brother on the quay. Sansa's chest tightened. They all kept leaving, Robb to Banners, Rickon to a spear's heart, Arya to the far ends of maps. And yet here Bran sat beneath a foreign sky, calm as a crow at roost, weaving futures from leaves. She kissed his cool brow. Send word if the tapestry frays. It already has. He murmured, gaze drifting to the comet's dying tail, now a faint rust smear at the edge of dawn. But sometimes the loose threads make the strongest new design. Jon watched Sansa's column snake through the Dragon Gate at noon, direwolf banners rippling above mailed shoulders. Rhaegar Jon, chubby fists grasping the railing of a balcony high above, squealed at the flash of steel and horseflesh. The babe's silver-black hair gleamed in the sunlight, and when Daenerys scooped him into her arms, he slapped tiny palms together, delighted by the noise of hoof on stone echoing through the square. Starks travel light of words, Jon said, arms folded, but heavy with thoughts. Daenerys brushed a curl from the child's brow. She trusts you. A pause. Almost. Almost is a wider bridge than once it was. He leaned his weight on the balustrade. Do you think she'll forgive the South in time? She'll forgive what serves the North. Daenerys' voice held no bitterness. That may be forgiveness enough. Below, one of Sansa's outriders blew a single sharp blast on a wood-tipped horn. Farewell. Jon answered with a raised fist, the gesture of old Nan's hearth tales. Strength travels through the air, bone to bone, when distance steals voice. Sansa's hand lifted in mirror. Then the company vanished beneath the Barbican Arch, and North rode north again. Across the narrow sea in Volantis, the temple of the Lord of Light roared with 1,000 torches, while the Red Priests debated the meaning of the blood cinder across the heavens. Some proclaimed it the sword that would herald Azor Ahai reborn. Others called it the last breath of a doomed world, and urged cleansing flame to purge unbelievers. In a shadowed alcove above the riot of crimson robes, a woman listened, unseen. Pale hair coiled like smoke, eyes shifting hues with the torchlight. Quaithe of the Shadow had not stepped across a sea since the night dragons screamed over Meereen, but now she watched western omens with measured curiosity. When a young acolyte spoke Daenerys' name alongside that of the comet, Quaithe's lips curved beneath her lacquered mask. "Fire has learnt mercy," the acolyte said, voice aflame with devotion. "It is a new gospel." "Fire that forgets fear burns half as bright," murmured Quaithe, though no ear heard. She drifted from the temple like mist, heading for the docks where sailors from Mantares whispered of sea monsters, charred black, and left floating belly up in the Basilisk Straits. Her path would wind west now, following the spill of cinders across waves. Gendry's squadron made Stonedance by moonrise, 5 sleek galleys, and Yara's kraken-clawed flagship cutting twin wakes. Davos found the air thick with sulfur even 5 leagues offshore, as though some titan's forge lay stoked beneath the deeps of the stepstones. When the moon climbed higher, its reflection quivered red on the water, not silver, and his old smuggler's nerves prickled. Longboats ferried search parties through floating tangles of driftwood charred to weightless charcoal. What hull fragments survived bore rents the width of a warhorse, edges fused to glass. On one scarred plank, Davos traced a symbol half-melted, a black trireme clasping 3 arrows, triarch flags of Volantis. Yara spat over the side. "If Volantis loses ships this far west, she means to test your queen. Or test ours," she added with a wink at Davos. "You assume the triarchs sank themselves?" he asked. She gestured to the horizon where distant lightning danced without thunder. "Assume storms when your sails billow." Her grin sharpened at the edges. "Assume krakens when hulls vanish. But this," she lifted a fistful of slag timber whose center still glowed ember orange, "this is dragon's breath." "Only one dragon flies these waters," Davos said. Yet a shadow stirred in his gut, colder than the night wind. "And Queen Daenerys keeps him close." A splash drew their heads. One of Gendry's oarsmen hauled a length of chain from the depths, links blackened and strangely light. Attached hung a cradle-shaped harness, iron seared to rainbow glass. A second chain surfaced, then a third. Dozens of empty rigs designed, Davos realized, to carry scorpion bolts as thick as a man's torso. All were empty. All were burnt. Gendry paced the gunwale of his flagship at dawn, jaw tight. Someone built Siga weapons at sea. Something burnt them before they loosed. He met Davos' gaze. Or, before they reached their target. Davos nodded toward the shards of obsidian piled like night-black snow at the boat's prow. "We'd best sail hard for Blackwater. The city should hear whose toy blocks wash in her moat." At court, the summer season opened with the Festival of Reaping, a tradition Tyrion resurrected from archives older than the Dance of Dragons. A week of markets and games celebrating the first wheat harvest. He meant it to knit small folk loyalty, but found unexpected joy in its chaos. Children raced painted wooden dragons through the alleys. Bakers molded sweet rolls into wolf shapes for northern traders. Vendors sold glass pendants crafted from the obsidian shards Sam studied by lamplight. Sam sniffed each bauble with the wary devotion of a novice tasting wildfire. "No latent heat," he reported. "Whatever energy warmed them has drained." Bran, listening from his wicker chair, merely closed his eyes. "Stones remember. They do not forgive." The words chilled Sam, though the afternoon baked hot outside the study. That evening Bran asked to see the shards melted into trinkets. Sam guided him to a worktable scattered with glass roses and slipper pendants meant for Tanner's daughters. Bran rested 2 fingers on a black roses petal and trembled. "A door," he whispered, silvering the candle flames. "A small one, but enough." "Enough for what?" Sam breathed. "For voices. Bran opened his eyes, deep, dark, but gleaming with fractures of blue frost. They whisper of chains broken not by flame, but by hunger, and of wings, many wings, beating where none should fly. Sam's mouth went dry. You see more? Bran shook his head. I hear. He set the shard down. Tell the queen these baubles cannot be toys. Bury what remains beneath the heart tree roots. Let stone speak only to wood. Sam obeyed, but half the market had already purchased souvenirs. Children hoarded them. Women wore them at their throats, near the pulse of life. And in the night, across the city, some dreamed restless dreams of ash falling on black water, of monstrous shapes swimming beneath a red comet's glow. Daenerys dreamed differently. She stood on the crumbling parapet of Valyria, towers split by jadefire, the sea churning with shadows. Drogon circled above, but when she raised her arm in greeting, a second shape eclipsed the moon. A dragon of shadow, wings ragged as torn sails, eyes glowing a baleful green. Its roar ripped stone from spire. Drogon dove to meet it, and the clash of their talons shattered her dream into fragments of molten glass. She woke clutching Rhaegar Jon, the babe whimpering against her breast. A faint scar of flame sketched across his cheek, though no candle burned nearby. Jon burst into the chamber at her cry. When he saw the mark on their son's skin, his face paled to the color of old snow. But by dawn the streak faded, leaving only a faint kiss of warmth. The court's healers found no fever, no dryness, only a pulse calm and strong. They called it night terrors. Yet Daenerys smelled cinders each time she pressed her lips to the boy's brow. Word arrived from Gendry's galleys one wind-battered evening. Davos letters told of burnt siege chains bearing Volantine sigils, of obsidian fused into rope, of crewmen who swore the sea itself smoked in moonlight. Tyrion read the parchment twice before pouring 2 cups of arbor gold and sending one to Daenerys. She paced the small council chamber, wine forgotten. Triarchs build scorpions on floating barges, sail them west, and nothing but fire meets them. She looked to Jon. If Drogon had gone hunting, we would know. Unless he hunts in sleep. Jon's voice low. Tyrion interjected. Or unless something else burns. The council fell quiet. Across the table, Sam rubbed temples. There are stories, he began. Old Valyrian fragments of unfinished dragons. The dragon lords tried breeding winged beasts for water war. But the experiments failed. Some hatched with membrane sails instead of wings, bodies too heavy to fly, so they swam. Records say they died in the Doom. Stories, Grey Worm said. Yet we have ships scorched from above. Tyrion twirled his quill. And stones that glow without flame. Suppose some fire lurks still beneath the smoking sea. Something stirred by quake or comet, roused enough to strike at the first fleet, trespassing its nursery. Then, Daenerys' knuckles whitened on the chair back. If Valyria births monsters again, they will not swim for Volantis alone. They will follow blood that calls them. Her gaze fell on Rhaegar Jon asleep in Missandei's old cradle in the corner. They will follow us. Bran, summoned late, entered in silence. He rolled to the fire, hands folded like pale birds in his lap. The shard spoke truth. Another flame moves. Not a dragon as we know them, though dragons they were meant to be. His eyes unfocused. Stone and storm shaped them wrong. Jon leaned forward. Can we parley, or must we fight? Bran's stare drifted to the hearth where logs burned down to curling embers. They have no voices left to answer, only hunger and a maker's command written in marrow long ago. Drown the world in fire-boiled sea. A hush deeper than any before smothered the chamber. Outside a wind rose, rattling shutters. A sudden gust off the black water that smelled, to Daenerys, of charred kelp and deep ocean sulfur. Preparations for war, perhaps war, began in the hush before dawn. Tyrion turned the festival of reaping into a levy, coaxing volunteers with free meals and double pay. Gendry's smith plots rang with hammers forging deck-mounted ballistae tipped in dragonglass shards. Sam students ground obsidian into arrowheads fletched with gull feathers. Grey Worm drilled harbor guards in spear drills designed to pierce scaled hides. Jon met Tormund Giantsbane on the King's Road south of Castle Black, where the free folk had gathered 1,000 hunters to pledge spears. They marched under banners stitched from mammoth hide, depicting a blazing sun encircled by thorns. The new sigil of free men owing fealty to neither crown nor night's watch, but to the land that fed them. Boys crave songs, Tormund rumbled when Jon asked what payment they expected. Give them a battle that will leave teeth marks in the sky. He winked. And a bit of bread after. Across the realm ravens winged. Dorne promised sand ships laden with scorpion parts. The Reach sent lumber for more hulls. Even Prince Regent Trystane of the Iron Isles pledged 5 swift keels, though he asked leave to paint their hulls black as a kraken's heart, so any foe would see what drowned men feared. Daenerys let none sail until every soul had knelt beneath Drogon's shadow. She flew him low over Blackwater Bay at dusk, wings beating the water into ragged swells, the setting sun painting his scales molten. On the cliffs hundreds of soldiers lifted torches in salute, the orange glow mirrored in the obsidian pendants at their throats. Daenerys studied those dark jewels, each a door according to Bran, and shivered despite the heat rolling off Drogon's hide. That night she found Bran in the Godswood, his chair settled among red-leaf litter. Moonlight silvered his hair. "You fear the stones," she said. "I fear what listens through them. Can it see?" She touched her own pendant, a gift fashioned by Rhaenys Waters, jeweler to the court. Not through one alone, but together they form a net, each shard a knot. Bran's eyes gleamed white for an instant, then dimmed. "I feel the tug of something vast, as if a hand presses on the ocean's skin from beneath." Daenerys looked to the heart tree. Its leaves whispered in a wind she did not feel. "If those stones are doors, can yours close them?" "Some. Not all. Not those worn too close to living hearts." Bran's gaze slid to the child at her breast, to the small dark gem sewn into his swaddling cloth. The queen's vow that even her son would bear part of the city's healing. An open door cannot be unseen. Daenerys removed the shard with trembling fingers. The babe slapped on. She pressed the shard into Bran's palm. "Then close this one." He wrapped it in a fold of his cloak. "Cast it where roots grow deepest." She watched him wheel away toward the sapling's pale trunk, toward the place where the city's new heart beat. Above, the comet's last ember faded, swallowed by dawn. On the 4th day of the fleet's mustering, a column of smoke rose on the horizon, too dark for cookfire, too thick for autumn burn off. Lookouts atop the Gate of the Gods spied sails aflame drifting down the Blackwater like funeral barges. Davos flagships staggered behind them, listing but afloat, crew fighting blazes. Jon and Daenerys reached the quay as ropes were thrown. Davos limped down the plank, soot black and coughing. Yara followed, face gashed. "We sailed to the wreck fields," Davos rasped. But the sea was gone. He hacked seawater. Boiled. A league of it. Yara spat blood into the bay. Something rose beneath. A ridge, black and burning. Then it cracked open. Wings eye but no dragon. Fins like sails. And mouths. She swallowed hard despite herself. Too many mouths. Jon steadied the smuggler. "How many ships lost?" "3. And the water. It scalded men clean of flesh." Davos' haunted eyes fixed on Daenerys. "It hunts heat. The hotter the hull, the surer the strike. Our pitch sealed death inside us." Daenerys' breath caught. Dragons adored heat. She looked toward the red keep where Drogon perched, sunning himself. "And if it smells a furnace heart?" Yara followed her gaze. "Then we gut our own before it guts us." That night, the city trembled under a quake that buckled streets, and sent towers shedding tiles like scabbed skin. In the Godswood, Bran convulsed, eyes rolled white, breath hissing. Ghost found him howling until guards came. He whispered a single word before darkness claimed him, unbound. At sea, beyond Dragonstone, a glow spread beneath the waves, dull crimson at first, then brighter, blossoming into a ring of fire that writhed like living coral. From its heart climbed shapes, neither fish nor worm. Colossal, forged of basalt crust and sinew, their scales fissured with magma light. They shrieked. A sound like molten stone plunged in water, and the night answered with thunder as clouds frothed overhead. Gendry, aboard his half-built hammer ship, watched one leviathan rear above the prow. Its head bore no eyes, only pits agleam with emerald glare. From gaping jaws dripped seawater that steamed before it struck deck. When it bellowed, he felt his bones flex. He threw the first torch of wildfire himself, a spear of green that burst on the beast's face. The creature shrank, flesh bubbling, but then lunged, jaws closing on the mast. The hammer ship heaved. Sailors hurled pots of Greek fire, arrows of dragon glass, but for each wound the creature shed sizzling seawater that cooled too quickly for flame to root. Only when a volley of scorpion bolts pierced the vents along its neck did it jerk back, screeching. A second bolt, silver-fletched, tipped with the brightest obsidian Sam's scholars had blessed with charcoal runes, lodged deep. The monster shrilled, convulsed, and crashed sideways, gouging a trough through black water as it fled. Blood steamed in its wake, pearlescent and stinking of brimstone. Gendry ordered all ships to quarter their furnaces, douse pitch barrels, and ride dark. They crept for the black water under moonless sky, trailing silence and prayers. At dawn, Drogon lifted from the Red Keep with a roar that shook statues from parapets. Jon stood beside Daenerys on the Tower of the Hand, wind whipping his cloak. "If you meet them alone." "Not alone," she said. Rhaegar Jon latched to her breast one last time before Missandeia's cousin took him. "With our son behind stone walls, with your blade at the helm of the fleet, with Bran's roots beneath us." She met Jon's gaze, flaming resolve warring with sorrow. "But I must greet them in the tongue of fire, before they learn to speak with drowned cities." Jon kissed her brow, tasting salt, tears or sea mist he could not tell. Drogon's shadow engulfed them, a night that throbbed with furnace heat, and a moment later she soared into the dawn, crimson plumes of sunrise sliding across obsidian wings. She flew east, chasing the line where sky met sea. Beyond Dragonstone, she found the waters marred by floating corpses of kraken-painted warships, masts burnt hollow, scorpion frames twisted like spiders in mid-agony. At the ring of fire's edge she hovered. The sea roiled, glowing from beneath as though the floor of the world were a brazier stirred by a titan's poker. Daenerys tightened reins braided of dragonstone leather. Drogon answered with a bass rumble. Something breached. Then another. 6, 9. Forms big as King's Landing sept, scaled in obsidian plates, braided with veins of molten gold. Their wings were translucent fins, beating water into vapor. Their tails ended in tridents of jagged bone. No eyes marked their faces, only hollow craters glowing green. They spiraled around the queen like sharks around a lone swimmer. Their calls were furnace whistles, and with each one the sea boiled higher. Daenerys lifted herself in the saddle, every muscle braced. "Drogon," she whispered, but the dragon needed no urging. Flame roared from depth of lungs, white at its core, licking the nearest leviathan. The creature reared, flesh sloughing in molten rivulets. Another swept in, jaws gaping. Drogon bit, teeth sinking through volcanic armor. They tumbled, locked, smashing troughs through boiling surf. Daenerys clung to rigging, hair snapping in scalding air. She threw her fear into a single command: rise. Drogon's wings beat, and they ascended, shedding clinging weight. The wounded beast fell, hissed, vanished beneath steaming water. But 3 more rose to take its place. She realized then, for every one Drogon scorched, another boiled up from the fire below. A brood with no end, midwifed by the comet's kiss and volcano's womb. They were not dragons, not truly. They were hunger-given form, a maker's long-dormant curse, now woken by omen and human meddling. She felt their craving, heat, life, bloodline, all the things carried in her veins. In the distance, the sails of Gendry's fleet caught sunlight. If the brood reached them, hundreds would die before a single hull returned. Daenerys seized a clasp at her throat, a chain of melted swords from the Iron Throne reforged into a gorget. She tore it free, kissed the wrought steel, and hurled it over the side. As it fell, she whispered words in Old Valyrian taught by a warlock long dead. "Let fire remember mercy." The chain struck the water and sank. Where it touched, a hiss like a giant kettle rose, and a wide circle of sea frothed white. The leviathans shrieked and recoiled, fins quivering. Drogon hovered, wary. Daenerys felt the air cool a fraction, an invisible boundary drawn. The beast circled, but did not cross. Below, the chain continued to fall, links glowing, dragging memory of iron thrones and broken wheels into the abyss. The brood followed, drawn by some command grafted into their marrow. Protect, devour, return. One by one they slipped beneath the waves, tails lashing crimson froth that faded to pink, then to calm blue. Daenerys and Drogon alone remained above the quiet sea. Steam lifted, ghostly, around them. She exhaled a breath she had not known she held. In her palm she found a single shard of obsidian she had kept from Bran's pile. Smooth, dark, lifeless. She let it fall. Back in King's Landing, Jon and Tyrion watched from the highest tower as the sea horizon burned white, then dimmed. From the Godswood, Bran whispered, "The doors are closing." Every obsidian pendant across the city cooled to ash gray, then cracked. Women gasped as necklaces snapped. Children cried when black toys turned brittle in their hands. Shards crumbled into dust that drifted into gutters and was swept away by the next day's tide. 3 days later, Daenerys returned, hair singed at the tips, cloak stiff with salt. She walked the length of the throne room barefoot, Drogon's roars echoing from his eyrie. Jon met her halfway. She collapsed into his arms. "Gone," she said against his chest. "I spoke mercy, and the sea answered." Later, Bran told them the chain forged of old swords had carried memory itself into the deep, memory of crowns broken, of futures burnt, sacrifice to quench a fire twisted wrong. Some histories must drown so others may breathe. Autumn settled gentle on the realm. Gendry's fleet sailed unharassed. Volantis sued for reparations, Triarchs humbled by losses they could not name. The festival of reaping concluded with a new rite. Citizens cast shards of the crumbled pendants into the black water, thanking the river for washing fear away. Sam added a page to his chronicle. When dragons chose mercy, the sea learned silence. Bran tended the heart tree, whose roots drank the dust of shattered doors. Rhaegar Jon took first steps beneath its red leaves, laughed when a raven hopped onto his shoulder, as if greeting an old friend. And Daenerys, waking sometimes in the darkest hours, still felt shadow wings on her skin. Yet she also remembered the hush after storm, the still blue ring where monsters bowed to a word older than crowns. In that hush, she heard a promise, of dawns unmarred by comet flame, of children whose lullabies would outlast bell tolls, of dragons who could carry worlds upon gentler winds. Hope, once rooted, clings deeper than fear. Mist still clung to the gutters of King's Landing when Jon Snow left the Red Keep alone. The air smelled of broken storm, ozone and distant rain, and the city's lanterns guttered against a dawn too shy to declare itself. Every horse in the royal mews shied at the scent of singed salt on his cloak. So he walked, boots slick on marble steps that only yesterday had quaked beneath dragonfire and sea-spawned leviathans. At the foot of Aegon's high hill, he paused where the new heart tree's roots curled into half-healed flagstones. Pale bark glimmered under torchlight. Red leaves whispered with the hush of sea tide, though no wind stirred. Bran sat beneath the branches, eyes closed. Skin milk pale in the wan glow. The raven that had nested on Rhaegar Jon's shoulder now perched on Bran's, as if branch and boy were one. Jon cleared his throat. "Is it done?" he asked. Bran's lids lifted. "The door we feared has shut, but the hall beyond it remains." Jon frowned. In riddles again. "The sea is quiet now," Bran said, voice soft. "But quiet is not the same as calm. There are depths even my sight won't fathom. Whatever stirs there waits for another song." He looked at his brother fully then. "Smile fragile. You and Daenerys must choose the tune." Jon opened his mouth to probe further, but heavy wings cracked overhead. Drogon descended to the eastern rampart, talons scraping stone, and let loose a bellow that rolled over the rooftops like thunder trapped in a cavern. When the echoes faded, the city gave answer. Hammers ringing at the shipyards, a child's bright laugh near the fish market, bells from the Sept of the Seven restored to morning prayer. Life, refusing silence. Jon exhaled. Perhaps the realm has had enough songs for one lifetime. Bran's hand drifted to the grass. Stories never end, brother. They only change the teller. In the Queen's solar Daenerys cradled her son beside a brazier of red coals. Rhaegar Jon gurgled at the flicker of flame, reaching chubby fists toward sparks. The Queen smothered a tremor of dread. Each time the boy touched heat, she half expected scale to bloom on his palms. But his laughter was only laughter, and his skin remained soft. She pressed a kiss to his crown and carried him to the balcony. A hushed tide of voices drifted up from the palace ward. Healers cataloging injuries from the night's quake, unsullied training rookies to hoist new scorpion frames, stewards arguing over barley allocations. And below it all, beneath stone and water and root, the slow heartbeat of the land itself. Settling after shock, the Leviathans had withdrawn, their magma scars cooled. Yet the seam between fire and sea lay raw, as though needle and thread of the world had snapped mid-stitch. She turned as Tyrion entered, parchment in one hand, a flagon of Rhoynish red in the other. His eyes were bloodshot, his breeches still streaked with soot. "The fleet limps home, but she lives," he said. Gendry lost 2 fingers. Davos gained another story. Yara plans to name her next ship the Queen's Mercy, purely for the irony, I suspect. Daenerys gestured to the letters. Volantis. Tyrion's grin twitched. They claim ignorance, blame corsairs, beg protection. They'll pay through the nose for escort until the end of their grandchildren's reign, which I dare say was your plan all along. No. There was only one plan, she said, adjusting the babe on her hip. Keep ash from the cradle. Tyrion poured wine, offering her the first cup. She took it, though her free hand shook with fatigue. Any word of Quaithe? Like most phantoms, she vanished once the lanterns came on. Rumor sets her in Bravos, selling prophecy by the draught. He paused. And one more raven. Old Town. The conclave confirms what Sam already suspected. The comet's passage disturbed magnetics in the celestial sphere. They expect more errant phenomena for a decade. Tides that do not fit their tables. Starfall while skies are clear. Menso. More mutations, Daenerys murmured. Possibly. Tyrion's tone gentled. But we face them together. Dragons and wolves and dwarves alike. Rhaegar cooed, drooling on the hand sleeve. Tyrion dabbed at the spit with a handkerchief embroidered with roosters. Your little prince already claims me. One day he'll demand a seat at council. One day he'll upend the table, she answered wryly. But let him be a child first. A horn blew 3 beats beyond the walls. The North Road watchtower, signal of incoming riders. Jon's cloak appeared among the guards, and behind him thundered hooves bearing banners of a son pierced by spears. Dorne. Doran's grandson. Slender Meryn, dismounted with scrolls sealed in orange wax. He bowed to the Queen where she stood above the courtyard. My Lord Mother sends word. The Summer Isles have spotted firestorms spiraling west of Endeath. Waters their steam at night. Daenerys' breath caught. We burned the forge. She whispered. Not the coal beneath. Tyrion's jaw tightened. We'll need more than ships and scorpions if the world itself relights. A fortnight later, the council met in the Great Sept, newly roofed with pale cedar. Gendry's maesters unrolled silk charts inked with uncertain maps. Hot seas charted in orange, quake lines in crimson, comet debris predicted in streaks of gold. Sam pointed at the archipelagos flaring with geothermal bloom. These vents could birth creatures stranger than the ones we fought. Best we send survey craft now. Harvest data before fishing fleets blunder into the boil. Bah. Grey Worm nodded once. I can spare 1 cohort. 5 small ships. 6, Jon countered, eyes fixed on the map's western margin. The Stormlands owe the realm their hulls. We'll need storm riders who know shifting currents. Marad Reed, fresh from Moat Caelan's law courts, tapped the parchment. The neck floods more each moon. If the seas gain heat, polar melt follows. Riverlands may drown within 2 generations. We must begin dike work. Tyrion rolled his shoulders. We barely finish healing 1 war, and the world hurls anew at us. But very well. Stone masons shall eat heartily for decades. Daenerys listened, hands clasped before her. No crown weighted her brow. Silver braids wrapped like rivers about her head. She envisioned levees spanning fertile valleys, floating granaries anchored in once dry deltas, sky patrols charting firestorms before they hatched monsters. An empire built not of conquest, but adaptation. Then let this be our peace, she said. Not a sleep between battles, but labor unending. We will not raise swords to outrun the tide. We will raise walls, plant mangroves, seed clouds, forge alliances with water tribes who know what we have forgotten. We will become stewards, not masters. Then, Jon's gaze warmed. Swords could win dawn, but toil kept it. And toil, if shared, could heal more than wounds. Work began. From the Val's granite heights came engineers who carved diverting channels. From the reach poured barges of willow saplings to root new riverbanks. Nymeria sand arrived at court with Dornish wind machines able to sling pumps a mile inland. In Old Town, the high towers opened catacombs long sealed, yielding scrolls on Rhoynar water magic lost since the scouring. Arya returned unannounced one rain-soaked morning, her swift keel docking at King's Landing's east pier, while gulls wheeled overhead. She leapt to the quay, boots splashing, and tossed Jon a satchel of strange shells fetched from far western beaches. Found no monsters, she said, shrugging. Just endless water and the whisper of songs beneath. She placed 1 shell to Bran's ear that night. He smiled, hearing what no other could, currents humming like ghost harps. In dreams he followed those currents to isles, where men walked with skin of polished jet and eyes bright as dawn, where they carved spirals in sand to mark the turning of long tides. He woke hungry for stories beyond even Weirwood's reach. Winterfell sent barrels of northern pine resin that burned clean and cold. Dorne shipped petrified sandstone that could store heat without shearing. Together, the substances lined newborn forges floating on barges, anchored safely upriver, smelting ores with minimal spark. Mate to a changed world where stray flame might breed abomination. Through it all, Drogon patrolled twilight skies. Children cheered him now, calling him the Watcher. His passing kept smugglers honest and gave comfort to laborers, hauling stones on night shifts to escape noon scorch. Yet when he roared, windows shivered, reminding all how thin pieces veneer could grow. 6 months into the grand endeavor, ravens spilled rumors of sickness on the Jade Coast. Fishermen returning with scales on their arms, coughing steam. Maesters dispatched to treat them found blood hot enough to curdle milk. Sam read the dispatch aloud at council. Silence followed like a lid clamping on a pot of boiling stew. Tyrion sipped watered wine. First plague in years, and it must roast men alive. How poetic. Grey Worm glanced to Daenerys. Send unsullied squads? No, she said. Send healers trained in cold alchemy. We fight heat with inverse flame Tainashadi. Her fingers traced Rhaegar Jones' curl-framed face where he dozed in a wicker cradle. We are past the age of swords for every ailment. Jon agreed aloud, but later he stood alone on the palace roof, scanning the horizon where sea met sky. There he felt again the faint tremor beneath stone, the restless shifting of plates deep underfoot. The realm adapted, aye. But the gods might ask if mankind could do so without forging new madness in the process. He thought of Maegor's cruelty, of Daenerys' first near fall to wrath, of his own hand on a knife poised once to end love for duty. He touched the hilt of Longclaw. Steel, though forged for death, could hold line against tempest if wielded for life. Yet every blade cast a shadow. One day, their son would choose either steel or book, dragon or dove. Jon prayed both. A year passed in ceaseless labor, and for a while the world seemed to breathe easier. Leviathan sightings dwindled. Coastal vents cooled. Markets bustled again. Songs of the boiled sea became tavern exaggeration. The last fragments of obsidian jewelry collected in temple censers and ground to powder, mixed into mortar sealing the flood walls. A superstition Sam blessed more than he mocked. Bran's sapling unfurled new boughs, until crimson canopy arched above the yard, like a lord's pavilion, shade for stone masons at noonday. Then came the night of 2 moons. It began with a ripple, stars dimming as if veiled, and then the heavens split. A second lunar disk drifted out from behind the first, smaller, darkly red, its rim bleeding meteors that sizzled to ash before touching sea. Astrologers howled. Septons prostrated. Small folk fled indoors, clutching lanterns. The old moon glowed silver still, but its newborn shadow twin pulsed crimson, like a wound refusing to close. In the godswood, Bran convulsed once, then whispered one word, "Echo Wadi." Maesters scurried to sextants. Sam calculated orbits. Heart hammering. The red body. "It's no moon," he told Tyrion. "It's the comet, drawn into capture by tide of forces we barely parse. It circles now, a dying ember shackled to our sky." The council met at midnight, torches flaring. Daenerys stood at the arched window, twin moons reflecting in her eyes. One hope, one omen. Behind her, Jon clasped a hand on her shoulder. Around the table, faces flickered between awe and dread. Sam cleared his throat. If it decays further, fragments could rain for centuries. Fiery storms, new craters, tidal surges. Gendry drummed fingers. "We tamp dikes. We build fire shelters." Yara scoffed. "Shelters won't save fleets if sky stones boil oceans as those beasts did." Tyrion pinched brow. "Removal is impossible. We cannot sling a moon away." Bran's voice, calm, cut in. "Not with stone or spear, but with song." They stared. He met Daenerys' gaze. No chain forged of iron this time. A chain of will, of flame called pure. Ancient Valyrian glyphs speak of sky chants that guided hearts of dragons through darkness. Daenerys breathed, remembering the hush when she had spoken mercy and the sea beasts obeyed. "You mean to sing it away?" "To guide its fire where it cannot harm," Bran affirmed. "Into the deep void between suns." Grey Worm tightened jaw. "Song needs singers." "Who?" Bran looked to the queen. "To dragons who know mercy, and to those who ride their dreams." Silence. Drogon shrieked above the tower as though answering across stone. Daenerys felt the old thrill of impossible quests, the pull of fate's tether. Yet she pictured Rhaegar Jon asleep, a curl pasted to his cheek, safe only if she returned. Jon stepped beside her. "We ride together," he said. Tyrion exhaled like a man at dice table turning cold. "Then the realm will have need of stewards." They prepared on the hill of the old dragon pit, beneath charred ribs of a dome shattered in Aegon the These's fury centuries ago. Wind howled through bone-like arches. Drogon landed, wings folding like banners. Rhaegal's empty saddle straps fluttered ghost-silken. Daenerys tightened new cinches woven of northern direwolf. Bran arrived borne by 4 sworn shield maidens in a palanquin fashioned of heart-tree branches. Sam laid scrolls at his feet, incantations transcribed from Valyrian glyphs, long undeciphered. Bran had traced melodies in them, half-remembered tunes of the children of the forest, half-forged verse of Valyrian dragon keepers. A braid of languages twined into one. At sunset, the twin moons climbed, Silver Mate and Red Echo. The city held its breath. Jon swung into the saddle behind Daenerys. His arms circled her waist. She felt his heart hammer twin to hers. Below, Rhaegar Jon watched from Missandei's cousin's arms, tiny fist clasping a wooden direwolf. "Protect him," she whispered down. Gray worms saluted. Then Bran sang. The first note quivered like reed flute across an autumn marsh. The second rolled like thunder beneath summer clouds. Daenerys' eyes stung. Drogon hummed in answer, scales lighting from within as though veins of gold stirred under obsidian armor. Winds caught the melody, dividing and braiding it through arches, carrying shards of sound skyward. They rose, higher than the Red Keep's highest spire, higher than storm clouds that ringed the city in bruised purple, until the air thinned and breaths came sharp. Yet the song buoyed them. Jon felt lungs fill as if with dawn. Below, King's Landing dwindled to a spark. Ahead, the twin moons dominated. One pale coin, one bleeding ember. Drogon circled the red moon's rim, flames spiraling from open jaws. The comet's husk answered with crackling streamers of ionized dust, flaring bright green where flame touched. The world fell away. Only Starfield remained, wheel pinpricks pinning black velvet. Bran's voice reached them, though wind should have eaten sound. Weave. Daenerys and Jon joined, voices raw but strong, singing words older than cities. Drogon beat wings in slow, deliberate cadence, carving invisible runes through charged air. The red moon vibrated, its glow flickering. Jon felt something shift, gravities tugging like tides in his marrow. Silver moon glimmered warnings. Fail, and sky shatters. He poured every memory of love into the song. End's smile, Rob's laugh, Arya's grin. Sansa's fierce pride, Bran's dreaming calm, little Rhaegar's first cry. Daenerys wove hers too. Rhaegal's roar, Jorah's counsel, Missandei's steady hand, the touch of snow the day she chose mercy. Flame blossomed from Drogon's throat, but it was not white nor red. It shimmered pure sapphire, unburning yet radiant. The beam struck the crimson orb. Cracks widened like molten rivers across its face. Chunks drifted free, turning to glitter before vanishing. The red moon pulsed once, twice, then surged forward, no longer pulled by the world below but guided along the song's staircase of light. It drifted outward, shrinking with distance, ember fading to coal to ash to nothing. When at last the sky held only one moon again, Drogon's flames guttered, Daenerys slumped, skin slick with frost sweat. Jon tightened arms, grounding them both until breath steadied. They descended to dawn streaking the east. A quiet, ordinary dawn. On the city's ramparts people cheered, tear-struck. Bran sat slumped, but his lips curved in faint triumph. When Drogon alit beside the heart tree, its leaves rustled a welcome. Bark drank frost melt, dripping from dragon scale. Roots glowing faintly crimson, then paling steel white. Daenerys slid from the saddle, straight into Rhaegar Jon's waiting giggle. She pressed her brow to his, tears hot. Jon watched the sun clear the horizon, felt its warmth unmarred by comet smolder or ash storm. For the first time since the long night, dawn felt simply dawn. Tyrion approached, eyes red. "You've sung the sky clean," he said, voice hoarse. "For now," Jon answered. Daenerys looked at the city, at flood walls rising, at forges hummed to safer flame, at saplings shading streets where once ash fell. "We'll sing again if needed," she said. And again, until the world learns the words. Deinen? Bran's raven landed on Drogon's horn, cawed once, as though marking final chord. Peace, they all knew, remained a verb, ceaseless, tireless. But beneath one moon and a newborn sun, humanity found the tune.